Hello, hello. I'm so excited that y'all are here, and thank you to saying yes to your first, or I guess second couples interview, both of y'all
Yeah.
together, especially in a really
Not
long
since
time.
we had our baby.
Yeah. When you Jason got his podcast 4 years ago? I don't know. There's so much that's happened in between
Wow.
that recording and this recording that I'm like, whoa, we probably should have done maybe a couple more in between, but
Yeah,
here
it'd be
we
like
are.
a time, like we all took a time machine. Like,
Right on
Yeah.
time, though, Kevin. Right on time for you.
Well, it's right on time. Exactly. And for the world and
Yes.
for people listening to this. I have so many questions, but really, I just want to hear about y'all's story and how y'all met and how y'all got to this point, especially since y'all do work in the relationship coaching space. I always have questions for that, being in a relationship yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so, how did this all start for y'all
I'm going to let you start
man,
that.
in your
I
journey
think like
together?
a lot of relationships, it started with a DM. I dropped into her DMs on Instagram, the other dating app that no one mentions as a dating app, and I just sent her a message. I'd read her writing and I loved it, and I'd watched a couple of videos she had done. And this is like really early. I think you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about quantum physics or something. I forget, but I sent her a DM and she wrote me back, and I said I'd love to connect beyond the gram. And you know when you send the message and then you wait and you're like, what is going to be like? Will this be a positive reception? And I remember writing her back and saying, well, that's about the best possible reply I could have gotten because it was so genuine and no games. And yeah, she was basically like, do you want to move in together? I'm
Oh,
ready.
gosh. No. Come on. It
No,
definitely wasn't that.
but it was like, yeah, you know what? I'd love to. And anyways, it was great. So that's how we met.
Yeah. It's so funny because Mark always is like, wow, you zero BS right up front, ready to go. And the the backstory behind that is because that day I made a list. You know, you hear that on Instagram or you hear those from teachers. Make your list, write out all your relationship desires, blah blah blah. Well, I was like, okay, I'll do it. Right, I'll dive into this. Anyways, I made a list, and then that night or that next morning, I woke up with a DM from Mark, and I was like, no, no, no. I was like, way too soon, Spirit, way too soon. I was like, I was just putting it out there. I was like, I didn't really want to dive into a relationship in less than 12 hours, but apparently yeah, my lessons awaited. So,
Yeah, you know, it's funny too because about a month before that, I had created a list, and so I guess my manifestation skills aren't as fast, but I had created a list and I had written. Have you ever read Think and Grow Rich? Yeah, so in
Mhm.
that he has a list of things that you write out, like here's what I'm committed to, here's what I'll exchange for it, here's when I want to buy. So I had said by January 1st, I'm going to meet a person that I want to build like my life with. In exchange for that, I'm going to live my life fully in integrity, fully, all the things. And so that process became part of my course Dating 101 because I was like, this shit works. It's if you're willing to give something, truthfully give up the things that are holding you back, you can create and find the person that you're looking for.
yeah. And then since then, there's been a lot.
What?
Yeah, yeah. And then we broke up and got
I'm
back
sure that's
together
just the
and had a
beginning of
baby.
the story.
Yeah. So,
Well, all right. Well, let's rewind for a second. What did Mark? I want to ask you. What did you have to give up? Because you said you had to give up some stuff in order to be in
Well,
that
when
spot
I first
for
started
you
writing
personally.
about relationships was about 13 years ago, maybe 14. And I knew that the first time I hit publish on something about what I was learning or what I knew to be true, I had to live what I knew to be true. So my writing became a way that I, one, excised my shame, like what I had learned through the mistakes I'd made in my life, the ways my shadow had played out. So I knew that my integrity, in order to teach something, I needed to live it. That was a level that I knew I needed to operate from, because then you couldn't write a tell-all about me. And I knew that when I was requesting that I wanted to bring in someone to build a life with, none of my BS could exist anymore. And I still had like little grains of not being fully committed to being fully in integrity. So like following,
Mm.
I can't like off the top of my head, it would be like energetically giving energy to like a hot yoga chick on Instagram, not seeing that it's
Right.
not aligned, I found another hot chick on Instagram, but one that I could direct my But do you know what I mean? Where your energy is being diffusely sent
I do.
towards what you say you want is not what it's being sent to. And I was like, no, my energy is 100%
Yeah.
going to be focused on actually being fully in integrity with what I say.
And Kylie, for you, I feel so many people write that list and then it's not happening, and they're like, "Why isn't it happening?" I've at least experienced that from conversations that I've had with women. Why do you think it happened so soon for you? If you were to like look back in that time, or do you even know?
Yeah, it's funny. Life is funny. There are times where I'm like kicking and screaming because something's not happening fast enough. And then there are other times where I'm like, whoa, 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 way too fast, way too fast. So it's kind of in between, you know? And it's like, where's that sweet middle spot where it's like, okay, right on time. And it's like, I don't know why the world works in the way it does, but it works
Yeah.
in the best way for us, I believe. You know, and in terms of the list, why it's not working, well, because there's still some stuff. Maybe not some work to do. I mean, sure. I think those moments of like running into the roadblocks of something not happening, there might be something for us to explore internally, or it's just not the right time. And I don't think we always need to create a story around that. And maybe we can lean into trust and surrender a little bit. But one of my mentors gave me a great piece of advice, and she was like, because I was like getting mentally looped on something at some point in my life, and it was like 90% of your energy focused on your desires, your wishes, your dreams, your needs, your wants, like what you're here to do in this world, and then the other 10% focus on like give space for whatever it is that you're kind of crunchy about, whether that's the relationship not being there, whether that's something not unfolding at the speed that you had wished or desired. And I was like, you know what? That's a good piece of advice. It's like, stay in your center, stay aligned with what it is that you know to be true in this moment. And then as you keep walking that path, picking up the breadcrumb after breadcrumb, then it's like that person will enter your life, or that next step or that clarity will arrive. So Spirit said I was ready. I was ready to get rocked again in a relationship.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting about when we create a list and then we're like, we do any change or transformation and we're like, we didn't get the outcome or it hasn't arrived yet. I think there's two things. One, you're learning patience, and the other thing you're learning is that never change to get something. Change because it's in the service of your evolution, and the outcome is just something that naturally arrives. So I think it's also learning that that we can't always tie outcomes to transformation, because if we do, we end up in suffering again, and I think we need to learn that.
That's so good. So important too. I think a lot of people get caught up in that. I've gotten caught up in that. Damn. So you DM'd her on Instagram, then you got into a relationship, and then you ended the relationship. What tell me about that first segment of the process?
We were together for how long? 4 years. 4 years. So about was it about a year and a bit in when we went to Australia?
No, it was about 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
Damn, that's fast.
9 months, 10 months.
That's fast. It was. That's true. November or December. So I love how we're like thinking the timelines out loud here. So we're in Australia. I went for a run, and I come back, and while I'm on the run, I'm like, before I'd enter a relationship with Kai, I'd made a rule like, I'm not going to chase people. This thought, as I say it right now, it doesn't stop. It's like I thought, I'm not going to chase people. I'm going to stand my ground, and because I have to leave my center to go after them. And I noticed that a lot of my teens and 20s was spent with me leaving my center, and someone might code that more as like anxious attachment. And so I noticed I was doing that. So I came back and I'm like, look, I feel like I chase you, I catch you, you run, I catch you. I don't want to do this. It's not fun for me. It's stressful. And she was like, "Phew." She was like sitting there, I remember, and she's like, I need to tell you something. Which, whenever anyone says that, you're always like, fuck, like what's about to arrive?
I don't even remember.
You said, oh, yeah, I do. I have a tattoo about it. Do you remember what that tattoo was? It's, she said, I need to tell you about a dream I had.
Oh, yes.
You can share, because now you remember.
Oh gosh, the dream, the never ending dream. Hopefully, I never have it again. I'm just kidding. I made friends with the dream. Yeah. So the dream Mark's referencing about, yeah, I'd say 7 or 8 months into our relationship, I had a pretty vivid dream where I was in a burning house. Mark and I both were in a burning house, and like with crystal clear clarity, I heard it's time to go. And I woke up from that dream shaking, like full on convulsions, like so afraid of like, oh my gosh, what do you mean it's time to go? Like, what is the directive here? Is it time for me to leave the relationship? Is it time for me to take a journey? I don't even know. It was just like immediately I went into like freeze mode. And luckily I was surrounded by some friends at that time who were like, maybe it's just your trauma. Maybe it's just your trauma coming out and getting in the way of your relationship. And I was like,
Yeah, like fear of closeness.
yeah, fear of closeness, or yeah, it's just old stuff coming up for review. And I was like, okay, maybe. And so I kind of ran with that. I was like, yeah, maybe this is my stuff. And just to give you some context, about a year before meeting Mark, I actually went through a divorce. And that divorce rocked me to my core. For those of us who have been married and divorced, they know what I'm talking about. It's a pretty intense process, especially within my family system and just within my own identities. I was like the perfectionist, the person who never kind of tripped or messed up or hurt anybody. And this divorce was like a complete implosion of all of those protective masks and strategies that I had gained since childhood. So I share that because entering into the relationship with Mark, I entered into it feeling split, is how I describe it. Psychologically, spiritually, emotionally split. There was like parts of me that were like, yes, 100%, this is the type of guy I want to be with, who I want to create a life with. And then the other parts of me were like, it's not time. You're not ready. You haven't done the work to create the internal foundation to create the life and love you want, all those things. And I was like, well, it's here. So ultimately, the yes was stronger than the no at that point in time. But the dream, while it was named and out in the open with Mark, still lived in the ether. Like it still lived in my body. It still probably lived in Mark's body. Because as much as I was like, this is trauma, this is something to work through. And it did. It catalyzed a huge descent for me into looking at all of my familial patterns. I remember Mark was the first person to introduce me to attachment theory. And he was like, yeah, so how you attach based off of your mother-child relationship? And I was like, nah.
That is great. I remember I gave her the book Attached to read. And I was like, hey, I just need you to add more context to avoidance because I wanted her to understand, especially because the book Attached is actually pretty savage to avoidance. But I wanted her to just understand the impact of distancing. And she didn't read it for a while, and I was like, "This is classic avoidance. Like you're avoiding the book." But when she finally read it, she was like, and this is true of Kai about everything. She was just like, "Oh wow, like I really see the impact I've had on you through this." Interestingly, though, the dream that she had, it created a subtle and not so subtle distance between us because essentially if you think about a healthy relationship, two people are almost all the time, I won't say all the time because we shift and change, but they're always orienting face to face or shoulder to shoulder. Like there's not a nudge of me kind of this way in a healthy engagement, but anyone can sense when there's just a slight orientation away from togetherness or walking side by side towards the world. And that was, I always felt this like subtle shift of her shoulder. I wasn't like fully allowed And that gave me anxiety, but it also, I knew there wasn't anything wrong with me that I was feeling that, because at the basis of my unconscious but also conscious was that she might leave at any time. Like, this dream happened, she might go at any time. And that also created a power dynamic, because there's that thought that the person who wants the relationship least actually has the most power in the relationship. That obviously is more from the perspective of game. But it's true, if someone is more avoidant or more oriented to leaving, they do hold more power in the relationship. And that's also because the person who allows that dynamic, me, gives away my power, but also sources it through the victimization. So these are all these like subtle things that we learned through this very annoying dynamic. Because fuck. But it came to a head. It came to a very big head, because after 3.5 years of not knowing when your partner might leave you, you get a little tired. And because what happened is I had deal breakers, and my deal breakers were children. Not marriage, but the desire to one day have a union, some sort of celebration. But she said to me, hey, about kids. Mine was about, I think I said 2 to 3 years when we first started dating, or 4 to 5.
No, I think you said 2.
But either way, we got closer to it. And she said, hey, about kids, I'm not ready yet. Can we delay? And I was like, I checked in with myself, and I'm like, yeah. Like, how long? She was like, well, about a year or something, I forget. And then she asked again. And I was like, no. Like, I won't delay. I'm 45. I've watched Old Dads on Netflix. I am old dad. So, that was foresight. And I don't look as crunchy as him, but, what's the actor's name? I forget. But he's great. Bill Burr. So I say to her, like, look, I want to create this life. I want to have kids. I want to build something with someone. I want to build it with you. But if you don't want to build it with me, I love you anyways, and you're free to go. And she was like, what did you do to... Yeah, it was like that. And
I knew he was right? There was this part of me that's like, you know what? I can't keep fighting the dream. I can't keep fighting the message. I can't keep fighting something inside of me that's not coherently aligned with the yes at this point in time.
And I was fighting it too, just so we're clear. Yeah. Like, I was fighting that I wasn't being chosen. She was fighting there's something wrong with her, that she wants to leave a good relationship. A good, quote unquote.
Right.
And the interesting thing, just to sort of finish my experience of that, is we went and saw, we worked with a couples therapist, and we did an intensive, and it was kind of like our last shot, because we'd done everything, man. We were tooled up. We had the tools. We had the self-introspection.
All the teachers.
We had the level of responsibility, but we'd never had a teacher walk through what we were walking through, in that it's like our book is about what we learned through this process, because we didn't have anyone who could guide us through what was actually going on in the subtle centers of attachment, of nervous system, of all that. And when we broke up, which was about a month after the intensive, she was feeling ill, which, how can you not? You're holding on to a truth that you don't want to accept, and your body and your soul and the universe are like, yo, like the next isn't a cosmic 2x4, it's a dump truck, and it's going to hurt. That's where autoimmune, like all these things kick in when we don't listen. And I, at the same time, I was always feeling kind of anxious. And so when we finally ended it, she was like, you just need to go. And I was like, hell no, nice try. Like, don't make me leave you. Like, you need to step up. And I was mad, because I'm like, don't put this on me. Like, this is actually for you. And so we had this, because we didn't have the right timing. I was working somewhere, and our final conversation actually happened over FaceTime. And you were in like a parking lot.
I
at a
was.
mall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was.
Her sister's
Good
like,
memory,
I'll
actually.
be
I'm not
I'll be
sure.
back. Good luck with your conversation with Mark. Um, but I said to her, in service of because the way that her marriage had ended was that she thought she had to burn it down, like she didn't have a choice to leave. And I had left an engagement when I was 27, and I desperately wanted, ideally it would have been great if my ex had done it, but I wanted someone to say it's okay. Like, just because you need to go and you need to trust that you need to go, and I love you. That's why I had from the other side the ability to do that, because I just desperately wished I had heard those words. And so I said to Kai, like, you need to leave this, and it needs to be you who says it.
Yeah. And it was, I forgot, I think you said something like, for your own evolution, your own soul, like you need to be the one who steps into agency and actually makes this choice in alignment with what you feel in your body. And I remember being like, holy, like he's so right. I want him to be so wrong, but he's so right. And so of course,
I love hearing that.
I know you do.
It's so good. It doesn't get,
So,
it feels so good.
so yeah, we ended relationship 1.0 as we call it. And just for further context, in addition to that ending conversation, the dream had reappeared. So I kept having the dream about 3.5 years later, and it was just like louder
Wow.
and louder. And it was like, if you don't listen, like your house might actually burn down. I was like, I don't want the actual house to burn down. And since then I've actually read a little bit more into Jungian theory and actually what the house represents, which is the psyche. And in many, like the psyche, the foundation of like how I oriented to the world. And, after our relationship 1.0 ending, that's essentially what happened is my whole psyche and internal foundation just burned to the ground. It was like everything I was operating within was like, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work for your next step. This isn't going to work for your next relationship. This isn't going to work for your life. So it's time to bring it all the way to zero. And I had thought I'd already done that post-divorce. The irony being like, yeah, you can do all the work with self, but once you get back into a relationship, then it's all going to come up again and be like,
Yeah, you think you knew?
this is
Welcome.
the next layer,
Yeah.
the next step in your adventure. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I love that dream now. I not in the moments that it arrived and not during our whole relationship 1.0, but now I'm like, oh, thank the heavens for that dream. Thank you for the catalyst. Thank you for the fire. Thank you for continuing to push Mark and I into some really deep, not so comfortable spaces so that we could emerge from that in a new way. Because when you're in a relationship and you're like, wow, this is a good guy, everything's great, like you don't have a new template. Like I didn't have a new template. I didn't know that something outside of codependency existed, to be honest with you. I was like, this is just the way relationships are. So when you're in it and you're like, well, this is just how they are, this is pretty good, you don't see what's on the other side, as in life, right, with anything. But yeah, once on the other side of relationship 1.0, and then of course there's a whole segment in between that and relationship 2.0, which we call the sacred pause, which for readers of our new book will understand what we mean by that. That's really where the descent process took place, and the burning of the house internally took place as well, so that we could emerge on the other side into relationship 2.0, and where Mark got his.
But that
What?
wasn't even.
No, you're
Say
good.
again. Oh, okay, I was just saying that wasn't even a consideration, or was it, of like getting back together? Was it just like, no, we're
I
done?
was done.
So like,
I
what
was
was that pause? Yeah, what was that pause like for each of you? I'm
You wanna
genuinely
go?
It was
curious.
probably a little different for
Oh
both of
yeah,
us,
for
because
sure it
for me,
was.
I was like,
Yeah.
peace out, Brussels sprout. I was like, I have no interest in going back. And at that point, I had completed, by having the conversations I'd had and we'd had, I had completed this, like, no one chooses me. I'd finally gotten so enraged with my own pattern that and the way we ended our relationship was really beautiful, that I was like, I'm not ready for a relationship yet, because that happened in September. But I was like, I know I'm going to meet my person, because to me it was like all I needed to do was meet someone who oriented to growth. Like if you could find someone who's done some basic, some it's a relative introspection, but if you meet someone who is interested in growing and takes self responsibility and accountability, everything's possible. And I remember just being like, I have no interest in going backwards. Like, hell no. And we had gone no contact for 3 months at first, and that was hard. We ended up connecting back after the 3 months, came back together for a night of sweet love, and we right after were like, this still isn't aligned. And so that was great that there was this level of what I wasn't used to, that I was experiencing, was discernment, was like, is this for me? And that was something, whenever I'd felt like a connection or a possible future with someone, I instantly was already in. I probably have the story that most women have, where I'm like, I was already in like fantasy land and, all the things, but I was learning to stay grounded in choice and discernment and be like, does this work? For Kai to come back into my life, a lot of people will ask us, how did you get back together? Because it's like everyone wants to know. And, the first thing I'll say is that your relationship has to actually end. Like, it has to die. It has to be closed. Because getting back together should never involve going backwards. It should involve meeting them, moving forward. And to be fair, what I believe is that if you're so oriented on moving forward and actually in your truth, in your passions, in your purpose, in your integrity, you actually won't care who's in your future. You won't care if it's them. And I didn't, but it just happened to be that it was her. And when she came back into my future at the moment that we started to come back together, she was very different. Like, I was terrified of women. I don't mean this like the women I dated weren't women. They were incredible women, but I ran from a woman who could choose me, who could confront me, who could call me out. I ran from a woman who could love me ferociously. And in our first relationship, she couldn't, and that's pretty clear just from all the things we're talking about. Not that there wasn't great love there, but there was something holding it back. And I didn't want to be in a relationship with someone holding it back, but apparently I did, because I chose one for a while. So in the service of suffering, I was like, I haven't learned this fucking lesson yet. So I finally got it. And when she came back into my life, she was a woman. And I was like, damn, okay, I'm not sure I want this.
His nervous system was like, whoa,
like, damn.
this is a little too regulated, a little too centered, a little too clear.
She was a little too
I think I might want to suffer a little bit
Yeah,
more.
exactly.
Yeah. So what was that process like for you to actually alchemize all that stuff and make that shift for yourself to show up as that woman?
Oh my gosh, that's my next book, by the way. Yeah,
Ooh.
that's actually was supposed to be my first book, but then Liberated Love was like, nah, we got to talk about this first, and then you got to write the next. Anyways,
Well, we talk about the process in our book.
For sure, but I'm talking about the more female-oriented process. Yeah, ultimately, once Relationship 1.0 was over and the burning house kind of became like a doorway into a descent that, forever changed my life for the good. I think back to what Mark was saying in terms of the non-negotiable with children. It's interesting, like when I reflect back and look through the lens of our now son Jasper, and how he was guiding even from above, it was that constellation of relationship in which we were in Relationship 1.0, the codependency, where I was still in like a very adolescent, young internal space in relationship in terms of my relating skills. Whereas like I was probably relating to Mark from my, I don't know, like what felt like a 2-year-old, 3-year-old sometimes. And it was like, oh my gosh.
And I was relating from a young place
and he was too. And it was like, okay, well, you can't bring a baby into the world. You can't. I mean, people can, but like you can't.
A baby having a baby, yeah.
Bring a child into this world from a constellation, like from a template that isn't in service to his consciousness or to the evolution of the planet. Like I was terrified of becoming a mother and mothering in the same way that I had been mothered. And that's my mother is beautiful and lovely. We've done such incredible healing work on this planet at this time. But I knew that I wasn't going to enter into motherhood in my wounded maiden, if you will. And so now looking back, I can actually have a little bit more context as to why certain things were happening in the way they were and why I was so resistant to them happening inside of Container 1.0. But to go into the sacred pause, we went no contact, which initially rocked me. And I just went and got intense. I was like really angry after relationship 1.0. I was like, why does this not work? Why can I not just be in a relationship? Why can I not live a normal life? Why can I just not have the house, the dog, the baby? Like, I just was so frustrated because I wanted it. And I remember one of my mentors being like, Kai, like, you're not meant for normal. Like, sorry, your soul didn't sign up for that. And I was just like, I was like, damn it. And like, I was angry and I was crying at the time, like on the call, but internally I was like, yeah, she's right. You know, and that's like the crone energy coming through. It's like, gosh, this is such bullshit, you know, like, shut up. Like, it'll all work out. Just, you know, just trust.
Yeah. You're so young.
Yeah. Like,
naive.
like, and it was cool because she was an elder and she was just like, yeah, I hear you. You know, I can comfort this part of you, but like,
you got work to do.
You got some stuff you got to look at. So the sacred pause was such a beautiful time. I mean, so much happened in such a short amount of time. It was 10 months in between relationship 1.0 and relationship 2.0. And I was deep in somatic therapy and understanding the nervous system. Because what was happening in relationship 1.0 was so somatic for me. Was like, my nervous system wouldn't open, didn't feel safe. I was frozen initially for like the whole time. And then once relationship 1.0 ended, I actually started to gain access to my anger. And I had zero access to my anger before that, because in early childhood, anger equals danger, or it's like, don't connect to anger because you might disrupt your primary attachment. For those of us who are familiar with attachment, you'll understand what I'm saying. And I was terrified of that disruption and attachment. The same thing with Mark. I didn't really step into agency, anger, confront him, disagree, for the most part. I mean,
every once in a while.
Every once in a while. And then, the burning house came with a lot of rage. And I was raging at everything at that point. So it looked like a lot of processing and alchemizing rage towards patriarchy, towards life, towards everything. And, you know, I think there's a few things that really supported me in the sacred pause and alchemization. I'd say nervous system somatic work. So I worked as a somatic therapist intensely for 10 months to support me in actually moving from insecure attachment into an earned secure attachment. And I'd say that nervous system work of thawing my nervous system, thawing my body, thawing everything, like releasing that freeze response and actually gaining the internal safety to actually access the full range of my nervous system is what allowed us to come back together in a new way in 2.0. In addition to that, I did a no man diet container with Kendra Kunov. And that container, we talk about this in the book as well, like this concept of liberation through limitation. It sounds so simple, like enter a container where you don't talk to men or seek out men for 3 months. I was like, yeah, I got this. I entered that container and it was like all of my deepest fears, my nervous system shot through the roof, anxiety through the roof. And I didn't realize what I didn't realize, you know? It's like a fish swimming in water. I didn't realize how much I was sourcing my safety from men, from their gaze, from just even connecting to them. Like, it was like my whole life oriented around men. Yeah, you know. And I was sourcing everything from them, while also not wanting to source everything from them. But that was the survival instructions I was given from my lineage, right? All the women in my life have sourced safety, security through men. Mm-hmm. And they had to. It was a really wise choice. Now we have enough safety, I think culturally, but also just in general, where it's like, okay, we don't have to actually source this at the expense of self. Sure, we can, like, with consciousness, learn how to be in relationship, garner safety, interdependency, etc. But not at the expense of your voice, not at the expense of your body, not at the expense of your truth, not at the expense of your womb. Like, let's be done with all that. And that's what I really got done with in the No Man Diet container. After alchemizing the fears of like, oh, I'm going to, like, when I tell you, Kevin, the fear was as deep as this, I'm not even kidding. It was like, I'm going to die without them. Like I really felt like I was dying. I was like, oh my gosh. And
Wow.
yeah,
What
part
part
of
of
me
you did?
did. And, you know, it was in addition to Kinder
Yeah.
Kunov's work, it was Mark Wolin who was like, he's like, essentially what's happening is this. It's like, based off of your earliest relationship blueprint with your mother, you have learned how to intuit the needs of other. So it's like a three prong. He said three things, like intuit the needs of other, pull them close, and make them feel good. Like you continually know how to, like, you're very good at that with men. And I was like, and he's like, and you just will keep doing that until, excuse me, until you wither away, until you either get sick, something blows up, or you just completely lose yourself altogether. And I was like, oh gosh, there's the pattern. You know,
Yeah.
something that I had just been doing since early childhood, which is orienting around other at the expense of self. And it was just the same template over and over. And he's like, if you don't do this work and pull back and enter an internal cocoon to heal your nervous system, to heal these inner younger parts, you will continue out this pattern for the rest of your life. And I was like, no, absolutely not interested in that. I will not. Like, and it took that level of seriousness. And again, an elder to be like, yo, stop doing that. And so I did a lot of mother work in addition to the No Man Diet, in addition to the somatic therapy, and in addition to another really important step, I started working with an indigenous group in Colombia. And I'll never forget, like, I was a part of this just initial gathering, and they said something that completely reoriented my whole life. And it was like, we think in the West that the mind informs the heart, informs the gut, informs the womb. That's incorrect. The womb informs the gut, informs the heart, informs the mind, like all the way up. It's a bottom up. And for some reason, that day, that moment, everything shifted for me. And it was all about coming in integrity with my body, with my energy, my sexual energy as well, my procreative energies, and living in integrity with my whole being. Because, I mean, as a woman who carries a womb, I've allowed self-exploitation and exploitation of the womb for, you know, for in this lifetime, but also I'm sure my lineage for a very long time. And so I didn't really know what it felt like to be a womb-centered woman. And I think when Mark's like, whoa, she came back different, I really believe that that's what happened. Is like
Her womb. She
my
came
womb.
back.
I came
Her
back
womb.
with a womb,
As a
and
womb
I was
man.
like,
A womb man.
I was like,
See what I did there?
we're done. Like, I will not. Because I don't think women understand the implication of not being in integrity with your own womb and in congruency with your own womb. Like, you can't think correctly. You got hormones, you got all types of stuff happening.
I think that's true too of dads. I meant dudes,
Really,
but
dads.
dads, dudes. But I think that's true of men too. You know that. I think one of the parts
Definitely.
of really stepping into a great relationship is being able to delineate what is a biological drive versus consciously what you know is going to serve your relationship. And what I mean by that is being aware of your attachment, being aware of your nervous system response, but not letting them lead your life and your reactivity anymore. And I think that, you know, people use the word like I woke up or I awakened. And I really think that's starting to separate yourself from your biology, not dismissing your biology, but just starting to be informed by how it drives your life, your choices, how testosterone does. You know, years before I'd met Kai, about a couple years, I had done what I called a Vaj vacation. It was not quite as progressive of a term. But I took time away from how I engaged with the vagina, how I engaged with women. Because to me, that was really important because I would just chase arousal, chase short-term connections, always have a limit to what I allowed. And if someone could choose me, then I was like, nah, like there's no connection here. You know, there's no chaos here. That's actually what's, you know. So when she came back, there was a different kind of, it was like an organized chaos in that she was like, okay, I choose you. I'm not going anywhere. And I was like, um, you know,
Yeah. I'm curious what that was like. Was there any repair process in that time of coming back together for 2.0, and what did that
yeah,
look
the
like?
the way we closed relationship 1.0, we did a closing ceremony. So we actually, I said to her, like, I don't know if people do this, but it seems like something we should try. So I Googled it and I was like, oh, there are other crazy people. And I took like a combination of a bunch that I'd read and just what I intuited I thought would be useful. I sent it to her. She was like, yeah, that sounds great. I mean, great. You don't know until you get to it what it's really like. But I sat in the car outside the house where we were doing it, which is the place we had lived together. And I remember thinking, like, I don't want to go in. Like, I don't want to go do this. And I was like, okay, why do I not want to do this? Do I not want to do this because I just genuinely I'm not ready? I don't want to do it. Or do I not want to do it because it scares me? Like, the person who can do a closing ceremony doesn't exist. And the answer was, yeah, that one. And I was like, shit. So I knew I had to go in. And the truth is that the man who left that house that day was very different than the man who entered, because I'd never known a closing of a relationship could be done with such reverence and love. And we lit a fire. We had bought this little birdhouse to represent the house from her dream. Yeah,
Wow.
and we burned the house. We played music that was like, I guess, important to us in our relationship. And then we navigated three speaking points. The first was, what are you most grateful for about the other person? What do you appreciate? Oh, dude, that's hard. The second one was, what is your favorite memory? Oh, it was like, she's crying now, I'm emotional now. In that, it was like, we could have put the fire out with our tears. And then the last one was, what do we hope for the other person? Which that was hard for both of us to actually access, which we were honest about. Like, I can't wait for you to find your person. Like, you're not there. But what it did was it set the template that we could love each other and it could end and love still existed. So there was an actual embodiment and experience of unconditional love. And when you have that, then you know you can come back together, because if you depart again, love still exists. You already know. And the truth is that all relationships can end. And that's not necessarily evidence of their failure, quote unquote, but the journey that they've served in this part of your lifetime. And I think as a society, we have a really hard time with this idea that if a relationship doesn't last forever, it's not successful, as opposed to through how it changes you, what you create within it, and letting it go with reverence and honor is such a different way. And one thing I wanted to say too is that through Kai choosing to end the relationship, what then is born from that is she now knows she has full somatic access to what a no is. And because she has full somatic, and I also had now full somatic access to a no. Till you have full somatic access or just access to your true no, your yes will never be
You're
fully
not free.
authentic. Yeah, because your yes still comes with the conditions that you can't access your no. So a yes is not clear. So if you can't say no around men or around women, around arousal, and you're like, well, when the guy shows up or when the woman shows up, you won't be able to choose them fully or trust your choice in them. And that's why we tend to not have chemistry or connection with someone who's actually good for us. And we can't choose them because we still can't say no to someone who's not good for us. And just for clarity for people, that's a really important thing that we learn. And that's why, as I would frame it, a dong detox or a Vosh vacation is very important. Kylie doesn't like that term, though.
Yeah. The closing
Yeah,
ceremony is
it's very.
oh, sorry, Kevin. Keep going.
No,
Yeah,
go
I was just
go
gonna,
ahead.
I guess, to elaborate, the closing ceremony really set the template for reunion and repair.
Yeah.
Like Mark said, it was it was in that closing ceremony that I felt like love was liberated. Like we actually could be in truth without needing to be anything other than just what is actually real and true for us both. And that was really, I think, through the ending of relationship 1.0. I had a dear friend be like, what is true for you right now? And it was just like, I'm not ready to have children. And then it was just like kept spinning out until it got to like, okay, we need to end the relationship. So it was just like the truth started to become more important than all of the other layers in the way of truth that were protecting us from actually being in our authenticity. And, Mark and I always talk about the closing ceremony. We're still touched by it because there was something else happening in that house that day. When we burnt that house, I don't even know. It just felt,
it was so
it was the
sacred.
most powerful
It really
experience of my life. I think one of them, other than birth, the closing ceremony. And then, our reunion was actually really sweet. We came together and we kind of operated on similar questions that Mark had presented earlier in terms of, is this right for me? What is the highest and best fit for our relationship? Is it a friendship? Is it romantic? Is it, and of course we had some agreements in place. Like we weren't going to move in together right away because we knew that I had some subtle things with finances and being taken care of that clouded my judgment and discernment historically. So I just made sure that
she was rebelling against the patriarchy.
just making sure like, hey, don't get into old patterns. Just be aware. And I didn't think I would, but you never know. It's just nice to be cautious. And then no penetrative sex when we first entered that, because we were like, again, don't want the hormones to kind of get in the way of important conversations that we need to have in terms of figuring out, is this the right next step? And then we were also exclusive during that time, during our, what we call our dating container, which was a 3-month process of really discerning like, what is true for us? Is it actually stepping back into partnership or is it not? And since we had already access to that no, we were both liberated to be like, yes and no, but it was a yes ultimately, because here we are.
I did find myself defaulting to like, we're together, it's happening, and leaving that center of discernment. And I had to be reminded sometimes by Kai, like, and what was interesting is when she would remind me, I'd be like, oh yeah, this isn't actually a hell yes right now. Like there's something about it. Yeah. So I was like learning that in service of it working out, I was actually bypassing a lot of things I felt. And I remember working with the same somatic therapist she worked with. And she said to me, I was like, man, I'm having a really hard time leaning into Kai, like trusting her. And I said that to Kai, and Kai was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I said, well, you told me you chose me before. Like, why would I, now you tell me, oh, you must, no, like, I don't trust your choice. And she was like, I get that. And I want to earn that. And so I choose you. I'm not going anywhere. And I was like, and working with a somatic therapist, what I recognized is that although I had boundaries in relationship 1.0 and deal breakers, I actually lived way past them. So I remember saying to her, like, no, I have boundaries. She's like, you have words, but I actually put my body in circumstances that weren't emotionally safe. And I remember recognizing like, oh, that's why I had anxiety. That's why I had, because although I had verbalized boundaries, I wasn't enforcing them. And so I couldn't trust myself. And so that was really powerful for me to recognize in coming back together, that I was like, oh, I need to really stand in what's true for me. And that's where we really, in coming back together, the main commitment was to truth. Was the truth exists anyways. So we might as well lay it at what we like to say, the altar of the relationship, and then let the relationship alchemize it and work with it together. Because what I also recognized in 1.0 is that Kai's dream and Kai's fear of getting close to me was because there was a deeper sense. She was bringing forward my own self-abandonment. She was bringing forward her own, I'm a problem. But she was actually sensing through the wisdom of her womb, she was sensing something that needed to be cleared to actually create an interdependent, liberated relationship where it actually honors each individual, and the relationship itself is a third entity. And that, I think, was very different, where we started to orient to both our senses from a place of there's wisdom in the senses. And instead of Kai thinking, I'm a problem, that's why I can't choose this, it's like, I'm actually wise, that's why I can't choose this. And that was a very different framework. And so we started to trust that, and trust those feelings, and trust that we could use this container of relationship to liberate ourselves from patterns and from subtle codependencies, things that live in the deep ethers that we don't even realize are probably, they're not probably, they're generational, they're cultural. And can we offer and create a different template?
And that's so amazing. And I just want to say, like, before I can ask another question, I absolutely love y'all's love and this space that y'all are in. It's beautiful. I'm curious about the book that's coming out very soon and what you're going to be talking about in the book. Slash also, I have a question of what are your like tenets that you live by of relationship in 2.0 or possibly 3.0 because now you're parents.
Yeah, definitely a good call on the 3.0. We have 3 people now. It's a different container.
Totally.
Yeah.
We're not there yet, but
Yeah, we're learning that one.
we're still in
learning
the
that one.
middle of the lesson. We might talk about that in a decade and be like, "Whoa, that was the next level. That was the next step."
It definitely is, not to rush into the lessons of becoming a parent, but it does bring forward even more stuff that I thought I'd resolved or I thought I'd moved through. It has continued to point out where communication, and when you're really tired, or and also your humanness, and also welcoming a third. Yeah.
It's the best though.
But the book, man, the book is the journey that we're talking about, that we've just shared. It really walks people through, whether they're single or in a relationship, this ability to recognize the mask they wear, where they're stuck in relationship, the patterns of what attachment is, how that frames things, the nervous system, everything that we've had to do, that we had to pick these pieces up from different areas of expertise and then put them together into a journey for people to walk into, where if you're in a relationship, actually creating a container where instead of having to end like we did, that you go to 1.0 to 2.0 by putting in a sacred pause, like an intentional pause, where we did all that work to learn that the relationship actually, it was necessary that we fracture to come back together. And it is our belief that if you intentionally create the same containers, you can, if it's in service of your relationship. It'll either bring forward that it needs to not be together or that it does. And that's a really core part of this, is like the intention of why someone might read a book is to stay together. That can be the intention. But our intention is actually in service of what's best for both individuals. And ultimately that means best for the relationship, because we recognize that through departing, it was actually the most beautiful thing for us. So, like in working with people, I never work with someone with the intention that they have to stay together, because then my own bias gets in the way of, right? Then my own guidance is actually biased to what I want for them instead of what is actually best for them.
Yeah. I mean, in addition to that, I'll just add, like, for the single people, because I've worked with a lot of women and, who keep dating the same type of man. And they're like, I'm just ready for the relationship. I don't want to step into a container where I completely remove men or the prospects of my future out of it. And I'm like, well, yes, and like, you don't know what you can't see until you actually enter an intentional space of not wanting or seeking that. And so I share that in addition to what Mark's saying, because the no man diet container, or a removal from external seeking, actually brings to light all of the unresolved stuff that keeps getting in the way of us being able to choose or to align with I'm hesitant to say the right person, but a good match or somebody that is actually going to help you co-create a new relationship template moving forward. So yeah, we got relationship 1.0, all of the things we learned in relationship 1.0 in the first part of the book. The sacred pause is the middle part of the book. So going through the container, healing the body, like what we call thawing the body. So clearing out all of the freeze response and helping us come back into our bodies. And then we have relationship 3.0. So whether you're entering back into your old relationship or you're entering into a new relationship, we talk about all the things that might emerge for you in that process and how to continuing to orient to your body as your best ally and guide for creating what we call liberated love. So that's kind of like the overview of the format of the book. It's broken into 3 parts. Yeah, we're really excited for the world to receive it and also to hear, how it lands in the collective at this time.
Yeah.
A little
we're
nervous,
excited.
but very excited.
Especially because if you liberate yourself relationally, you will liberate yourself everywhere. You know, it's if you learn how to have boundaries and a self with your partner or just in relationship to partnership, you'll bring that self to every area of your life. And, you know, it's, you'll burn down everything. And I don't mean literally, but you'll figuratively burn down everything that no longer is in service of people's liberation, you know, and you know, that challenges a lot of the systems of relationship, but it challenges systems in general.
And I just want to add in something there because I think it was really important when one of our mentors said to us, like, you can't accept or tolerate abuse in any area of your life and desire to create love in another. Like, this is how big this is. And I use that word lightly, but not so lightly, because we really need to start labeling what is really love and what isn't love. And I know abuse is a big word, but it really rocked me to my core because I was like, oh, I can't keep tolerating that in this dynamic and want deep liberated love in this dynamic because there's not going to be real safety in my body because I'm allowing it somewhere else. And so that was really profound. And we talk about that in the book as well. It's like, this is a full reorientation to how you're relating with yourself and with the world. And through that, creation of safety, what it opens up for your heart and your mind and your body and your soul is a reconnection to the world, right? We're going from disconnection, protection, armor, guarding, to reconnection with self and then back out into the world. And we've had clients say, like, it feels like going from black and white, like living in this black and white world, to living in like hyper vivid color. As soon as you do this work to heal your internal foundation, then it's like, oh, I actually hear the birds, or I can actually see the sky, or I'm actually open again. And it's like, holy moly, there's so much happening around. And we're hoping that the book provides people with the resources they need or the guidance they need, and also, you know, a list of resources they can access to create that internal foundation so that they can actually step into agency, into choice in their life in every single area, and be the one that says no. No to all the BS, no to all the ways that we've been doing things on this planet that aren't in alignment with life or love.
There's a few
There's
of those
just
things.
a few of those that we need to look at.
A little bit.
And, you know, our hope and desire is that through this process of returning to self and to love, that we, you know, ultimately heal the planet and create my prayer, to create a foundation or a place that our children can grow and thrive in ways that they deeply deserve.
So if you didn't want to hug trees and get an acreage and grow food before, you might want to. No,
No.
I'm just kidding. But you might want to.
You might, and that would be awesome too. But no, it is a return to life. It really is. It's a return to life. It's a return to life, because when you protect what is sacred, which is you, and you remember that, you also can protect what is sacred outside of you, which is everything that is alive.
I absolutely love the vision, and I love the work that you're putting in the book, and like how comprehensive it is. And from what it sounds like, where can people find the book, pre-order it, or order it, depending on when they're listening
Yeah,
to
so
this?
you can go to either of our websites, but the fastest way is liberated-love.com, and you'll get a copy April 16th. It comes out, and we're also going to launch a book club with that. So the best way to be informed about that is I would just sign up to my mailing list at markgroves.com, and then people will get first dibs on all of that. We're also doing a tour, like speaking for the book launch, and those events will be on markgroves.com/events.
I absolutely love all of this and all of your story, and just want to say thank you so much for sharing all that you shared, and for the courage that your souls chose to walk this path together in this way. I see it. I just want to say thank you, because it is medicine for the planet.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
sir.
Kevin. We
Appreciate you,
appreciate it.
Kevin. Thanks for having us.